You know, the true picture of things is very clear here. Now, let's talk about use of words, language. Did the camp truly fall to our troop, or we went into an empty camp after Shekau had actually left the camp? Because many are saying, or some are saying, that's why I'm looking at some messages that said the troop waited for Shekau to move some of the girls and his men out of Sambisa and relocated to somewhere else before we took a stroll into the camp.
We work with information at our disposal. That information, I'm sure you didn't get from official sources. The information we got from official sources.
There wasn't a battle between. There wasn't a battle between our troops and.
To see the president, and the information he brought was that the military had taken over Camp Zero. So we were not there. You were not there. I was not there. The military brought us report. And if you want us to believe what you have just said, then you have to prove it. But for me, I believe what the military has said, because they are the ones that have been prosecuting this war for a while. And if they come back and say, yes, the last camp has fallen, it's enough for me. Anybody who wants to
I think if we have Thomases who would want the military to prove it. We've seen military go to war, and sometimes they also bring clips. And we are saying that the celebration we are having now seem to be a pseudo, celebration, because there was never a battle in that part of Sambisa forest. It was a stroll and a walk into the forest, and they met an empty forest. And if you say, I should prove it, but I'm coming up to say the military should also prove to the people who are saying, is this a fall of Sambisa forest, or just the same way we saw the girls released to us, and some were using the word rescued?
Well, if anybody used the word rescued for the 21 Chibok girls, that was not an appropriate word. They were released. 2 had been rescued. Those 2 that were found by the military, you can use the word rescue. But for the 21, no, it was not rescue, it was release. So if anybody used the word rescue, it's malapropism. He didn't use the right word. But then, in terms of did the camp fall or they vacated the camp, I've said it to you, Sulai, on this program before. I quoted something which I'll quote again. To those who believe, no explanation is necessary. But to those who don't believe, no explanation is possible. So, if anybody chooses not to believe the military, no explanation will be possible for that kind of person. But for those who believe, no explanation is even necessary.
I think that would have been very much appropriate when we talk about religious matters, matters of faith. But on this one, empirical knowledge, empirical facts can help us as a nation. But we'll move on and look at some other matters, because for security is one big issue, but again, the fight against corruption, which is also key here for the government, is something that many are asking if truly President Muhammadu Buhari and his team are ready in the fight against corruption, knowing full well that we've had issues that has pointed fingers at some of his key men, specifically the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, and even the man who sits at the helm of the agency fighting corruption, Ibrahim Magu. How is this playing out in the presidency with the hope of putting this renewed faith in the people on the president's fight against corruption?
Thank you. On the fight against corruption, you asked whether the president and the presidency was ready. I'll say they had always been ready. Even before this administration came into being, immediately the president was elected. He knew that one of the things he was coming to prosecute was an anti-corruption war. In fact, during the campaigns, it had been one of the 3 major planks of the campaign: anti-corruption, security, and reviving the economy. Now, specifically about the EFCC chairman and the secretary to the government of the Federation, I'm sure you are aware that a statement came from the presidency last week in which the Attorney General was mandated to institute investigations into those issues. As soon as the Attorney General is done and he submits his report to the President, then wait and see what the President will do. One thing I can assure you is that this President holds no prisoners. If anybody is guilty of anything, you can be sure that that person will answer for it.
Mr. Adeshina, let's extend it from there. A lot of people had high hopes when the president was, when he was elected president in terms of the fight against corruption. For a lot of ordinary people, they felt that one of the areas where they will see that will be along the roads, for instance, where people ask you to pay a token to be able to pass certain illegal toll gates that have been constituted. It would seem that there was a lull in that for a while, but it would seem that because nobody is checking, that has picked up full time. There are a lot of small pockets here and there where you would think that the common man should be able to feel that there is indeed a fight against corruption, but that is yet to trickle down. For a lot of people, they believe that this war against corruption is simply political.
The president is but one man, and is domiciled in Abuja, in the presidential villa. He won't be on the roads in Osun State. He won't be in Zamfara State. He won't be in Imo State. And that is why everybody, all of us, including you and me, have to buy into what the president is doing. Without our buy-in, it won't percolate. Without our buy-in, the president would just be one man. So you do
agree with me that this war is not percolating?
That was why the Ministry of Information particularly came with change begins with me. If we all accept that change begins with us, then we will see what you're talking about. The president is but one man. He is fighting the war from the top. But for it to percolate down, you and I have to be part of it.
Would you also say that the presidency has tidied all its own end in this? I mean, when we look at, for instance, some workers, I recall that our correspondent went out on Friday, just to ask how workers were preparing for the Christmas. And, quite a number of them had not been paid salaries, some of them for 3 months. In many states, workers have not been paid for, some of them, 4 months, 5 months. I recall even the presidency issuing a statement and saying that, state governments should be able to pay salaries from the Paris Club buyback that was given to them, So that situation exists. Are we sure that we're really ready to fight corruption in a situation where workers have not been paid salaries?
What you have just said takes us back to where we started from, true federalism. If states don't pay, naturally, it is not the duty or responsibility of the federal government.
Let's not talk about the states.
Let me anchor my thoughts. You will not be fair to me if you have said something and you don't allow me to respond.
Mr. Adeshina, I want us to, because again, I'm going to accuse you of cherry picking. And that's the truth, because if I mention two scenarios, a federal sscenario and the state scenario, and you choose to mention the states first.
I was building my response.
Fine, let's talk about the federal scenario then, where the federal government has not paid its own workers.
That is, it's not a general thing. And I recall reading the Minister for Finance saying in some agencies and parastatals where salaries had not been paid, it was because they had exhausted the budget. They had exhausted their budget for the year, and that's why they were not able to pay. And of course, an intervention will have to be done in that circumstance, and that intervention will surely be done. And it's not a general thing.
In the meantime, the workers are supposed to...
Well, complete the sentence.
I am asking you, what are they supposed to do?
Yes, when salaries have not come. Ideally, salaries should come before maybe Christmas because it's a festive season. And if it didn't come, it's just because it was impracticable. But don't forget that it's this same government who had said salaries must be paid by the 24th of every month. And that has been happening. So if it happened 1 or 2 months, the salaries were not paid because those agencies exhausted their budgets, then people need to be patient till those salaries are paid. But one thing they can be sure of is that the salaries will pay.
I asked this question in relation to the fight against corruption.
Yes.
Because some people have identified, first of all, we talk about the minimum wage is not enough to take anybody home. Yeah. They say that, people will be happy to be content if what they get is enough to sustain them or keep them, in a country that, there is a fair standard of living for all, as it were. And then if you're guaranteed that at the end of the month, what is yours will, be definitely paid to you.
Sure.
But in a scenario whereby we know that, or they're not sure of when it's going to come, or there could be any story, are we sure that we're really preparing the grounds for this fight against corruption?
No. The fact that your salary delayed 1 or 2 months does not then mean you become corrupt, except you always had a tendency for corruption. Don't forget, the federal government has told us the wage bill in a month, 165 billion naira. 165 billion. After some ghost workers were weeded out recently, 20 billion naira was saved. So the wage bill dropped to 145 billion naira. That is humongous for government now, considering what we are passing through economically. But government strives to keep faith every month. You know what other governments will do? They will retrench workers. But the president has said, as much as possible, he does not want even one person to lose his or her job. So the government is trying all that is within its powers to take care
Mr. Adeshina,
of workers.
we will explore more matters concerning the state of the nation when we return from this break. Do join us again.